Okay guys, we're starting our unit on poetry, and there are some things that you need to know that help you identify poems. They include sound devices that are used and figurative language. Okay, so poetry writers use language to make pictures, tell stories, explore feelings, and explain experiences. And writers will use many different kinds of methods to do this. And some of the methods that they use are called sound devices, and they add kind of like a quality of music to the poetry. Sometimes it almost sounds like you're even almost singing the poem. Writers use these devices to add to the mood of the poem and to the meaning of the poem. Some common sound devices that are used are rhyme, rhythm, repetition, onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, and consonants. So we'll go over those. Okay, the first one is rhyme, and we all know pretty much what rhyme is. It's words that end with the same or similar sound. Examples would be cat, bat, hat, sat. Those are easy. And then we have rhythm. Rhythm is a pattern created by the ending sounds of the lines of the poem, and it is what makes it almost sound like you're singing it. And an example would be when we say Jack and Jill went up the hill. Whenever you say that, sometimes it almost sounds like you're singing it. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. You hear that sing-song rhythm to it, okay? Repetition. This is using a word or a phrase or an image more than once. You usually will see a phrase over and over again in these poems. And examples of this would be, let the rain kiss you, let the rain beat upon your head, let the rain sing you a lullaby. Let the rain is repeated over 3 times, so that is repetition. Okay, onomatopoeia. This is using words that sound like their meaning. And examples of this would be boom, pow, bang, and bam. And over the years, a lot of kids that I've taught this to, this is one of their favorite sound devices, because they think about when you read the comics and you see the hero fighting the bad guy, and out to the side will be the words bang, pow, showing when they hit them. So these words stand for the sounds. The next one is alliteration. This is repeating sounds by using words whose beginning sounds are the same. An example of this would be, she sells seashells by the seashore. A lot of these words start with that S sound, so that's what alliteration is. Assonance is repeating sounds by using words with the same vowel sounds. An example would be, men sell the wedding bells. In these words, you see the E in the words a lot. So you have that vowel sound of the E, and men sell the wedding bells. Consonants. It's the repetition of consonant sounds in several words. An example would be, toss the glass, boss. You hear the double S repeated over 3 times in this sentence. Okay, also in poems, a lot of the times you will see figurative language. This is writing or speech that's not meant to be understood exactly the way it's written. Some forms of figurative language include metaphor, simile, personification, and symbols. I know you guys a lot of the times hear me say, I'm as hungry as a horse. Well, I don't really mean that. I'm not really as hungry as a horse. So that is figurative language, and I'll explain the different kinds. Okay? The first one is metaphor. It makes a comparison, but it does not use the words like or as. Those are the 2 words that you look for, like or as. Metaphors do not have those words. So an example would be, life is a roller coaster. You hear people say, oh, my life is a roller coaster, meaning they have just ups and downs in their life. They have good times, they have bad times, okay? That's a comparison between life and a roller coaster. But we did not use like or as. Now, simile. Simile makes a comparison, and it does use like or as, okay? So an example would be, He's as blind as a bat. And I say that about myself a lot of the times. You guys have heard me say that I'm as blind as a bat, which means I'm really not truly as blind as a bat, but I can't see very well. So I'm comparing my eyesight to a bat. And I did use the word as. Okay, so that makes it a simile. And then personification. Personification is when you give characters like animals or objects human qualities. So an example of that would be lightning danced across the sky. Well, lightning doesn't really dance. Dancing is what humans do. So we gave lightning a human quality. So that is personification. Okay, now there are 5 different kinds of poems that I want you guys to know. Now there's more than that, but for right now, we just want to get these 5 first, okay? So the first one is called a narrative. A narrative poem tells a story. It has characters and it has a plot. It almost is like you're just reading a short story. The next one is a haiku, and a haiku is a Japanese poem. It only has 3 lines in it. The first line has 5 syllables in it. The second line has 7 syllables, and the 5th line has 5 syllables. Okay? So it can only have 3 lines in the whole poem. A lyric. A lyric is a poem that expresses feelings. And it doesn't really have to follow any kind of rules about how many lines it has in it or anything like that. But it just tells about what the author is feeling or ideas that he wants to express. A concrete poem. A concrete poem is written in a way so that the lines of the poem actually form a shape. And we're going to read a poem where you will see how the actual lines are written so that it forms a shape down the page. Usually the shape that it forms tries to go along with whatever the poem is about. And then we have a limerick. A limerick is a humorous, which means funny, 5-line poem. It can only have 5 lines in it. And the first, the second, and the 5th lines are going to rhyme. You have rhyming words at the end of those first, second, and 5th lines. And then on your 3rd and your 4th lines, you're going to have 2 different words that rhyme. Okay? Okay, so here we have an example of a concrete poem. And you can see what I'm talking about when I say that the words are written in a way on the page that it forms a shape. Okay? This poem says, a sparkle way up high, one to make all your wishes upon, high in the nighttime sky, blinking like a broken traffic light, shining above us like a canopy with holes punched in it growing bright. Each night we look up at them in amazement. They hold our hopes and dreams. Their twinkle assures us that very thing will be all right, star. All right, that one is a little hard to read because of the breaks in the words, but I just wanted you to see how this can really show what a concrete poem means because you can actually see the image of a star here. Okay, so here's an example of a narrative poem. It's called Jimmy Goes to the City by Arthur Reed. Jimmy was a happy ape until some hunters caught him. He liked the jungle better than the city where they brought him. The city was louder, the city was meaner, even the dirt in the jungle was cleaner. So Jimmy made a daring escape. The hunters were suddenly minus 1 ape. He climbed the tallest building because from there he'd see how far away the jungle was from the middle of the city. Jimmy jumped into a passing plane, but the pilot didn't wait for him to explain. Jimmy flew back to the jungle and told his ape friends in their lair, the city's okay for a visit, but you couldn't make me live there. So in that story, you have characters and you have a plot. Jimmy is the character, he's an ape, and he was kidnapped by hunters, and they took him to the city. He wasn't happy there, he didn't like it, and he tried to escape, and he made it back to the jungle. So there's your story. You also hear rhyming words in this poem. At the end of these lines, you have meaner and cleaner, and plain and explain, see and city. You have several rhyming words in this poem. Now we have an example of a lyric, and this one is kind of long, but this is one of my favorites, so I wanted to read it to you guys. Okay, this one you will be able to see the writer's feelings and emotions. It's called Annabel Lee by Edgar Allan Poe. It was many and many a year ago, in a kingdom by the sea, that a maiden lived whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea, but we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee. With a love that the winged seraphists in heaven coveted her and me. And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that her high-born kinsmen came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went envying her and me. Yes, that was the reason, as all men know, in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we, and neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabel Lee. For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee, and the stars never rise but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so, all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. Okay, so this poem is really deep. It talks about the love between this man and his Annabel Lee, and she died and she was buried beside the sea, and he goes and he sees her all the time. So this is a very moving poem, and that's what lyrics are. They talk about feelings. Okay, now we have a haiku. Okay, remember, a haiku has 3 lines. There's 5 syllables in the first line, 7 syllables in the second line, and then 5 syllables in the third line. Very short poem. The path, hard and long, brings dawn with passage of time, and then my heart sings. Okay, so if you look at that, the path, hard and long, that's 5 syllables. Brings dawn with passage of time, that's 7 syllables. And then my heart sings, that's 5 syllables again. Okay, so there's your haiku. Okay, and then last we have a limerick. Now remember, I said that a limerick is humorous, which means it's funny, and you have 5 lines. The first, second, and last lines rhyme, and then your third and your fourth lines rhyme. Okay, so here it is. There was an old man with a beard who said, "It is just as I feared. 2 owls and a hen, 4 larks and a wren have all built their nest in my beard." So at the end of the first and the second and the 5th line, you have beard, feared, and beard again. Those all rhyme. And then at the end of the 3rd and the 4th lines, you have hen and wren. Those rhyme. Okay, so these are fun little poems to read, and that is called a limerick.